this should be fun. The promotional materials are in place, and so are you, Dr. Harris. So welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you, Mark. I am very pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it, to share your journey, share all the great stuff you're doing right now. So first of all, may I call you Patrice during this?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. You can call me Mark if you want. So could you, before we get into the business stuff and the rest of it, can you briefly introduce yourself as to who is Patrice? Who is Dr. Harris? Where are you from originally? Where are you now? If you want to tell people your favorite color, that's your choice. And if you want to reveal something, I always get good reaction on this one. If you want to reveal something that you've never told anybody before, this would be a great place. Like, are you running for president or something like that? Share with us.
I have been asked if I would ever be interested in running for public office. So that is a question that I receive often. By the way, and the answer is no. I'm more behind the scenes kind of person in some ways, although that's a little bit at odds with part of my story, but maybe we'll get there later. But I am, again, hello again, I am Dr. Patrice Harris, but absolutely call me Patrice. I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've lived here since 1992, but I'm originally a West Virginia girl, born and raised in a very small town in West Virginia, Bluefields, West Virginia. Did all of my training there from undergraduate to medical school, and then came to Emory to do my residency. And I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist by training. Currently, I'm co-founder and CEO of eMed, a digital health company. I also have my hands in a lot of other things. I am former president of the American Medical Association. I happened to have the privilege and the awesome responsibility of serving at the beginning of COVID. And I've had a varied career from private practice to public health. And so, as I said the night of my inauguration, I bring all of who I am with me into every role that I play. And I will do that today during our conversation.
I would hope so. I'd be disappointed otherwise. Where's family located?
I am an only child. However, my father had 9 siblings and my mother had 4 siblings. And again, we, most of my dad's siblings were in West Virginia. A few went to Louisville, Kentucky, but I have several cousins here in Atlanta. I still have family in West Virginia, family in Colorado, family in Louisville, Kentucky. So, so spread around.
No, that's awesome. Isn't it Louisville? Isn't it Louisville?
Louisville.
Louisville. I was told when I went there.
Not Louisville, not Louisville. It's Louisville. If you know, you know.
Exactly.
You asked me to tell you something that I haven't told anyone before, and I'll continue to think about that. But sometimes people ask if you had this other secret career that you thought you might do, and this is really tongue-in-cheek. Probably wasn't going to do that, but I think it would be fun to be a roadie, to a band. However, I always tease that I wouldn't want to do any of the hard work, right? Constructing the set, but I would be the roadie that comes out and makes sure the band has water.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's the advanced groupie, maybe, or something. I'm not sure. Any particular band?
I actually have variety of taste in music. I guess my all-time favorite band, top 2 bands, are Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Frankie Beverly and Maze. But recently here in Atlanta, I had the opportunity to see the Rolling Stones. Great concert. Elton John and his farewell tour. I love country music. I love Dolly Parton. So, and I live here in Atlanta, and hip hop I love. So I really do have an eclectic taste in music.
and they said diversity isn't, alive and well. I mean, geez. No, that's great choices, and some iconic people you're talking about there, to be able to go on for decades and people loving their music and everything is not an easy task. And so, good choices. I will let them know that you said that. I'll send them the video, and
Okay.
who knows what can happen. So
No, that's right. Maybe there's a next career for me.
that's right. And we won't be watering it down or everything. We're going to be still the whole thing. So, oh Lord, hope I don't get into the dad jokes. They'll kill me. So what were you like as a kid or a teenager? Were you playing doctor or nurse, type of thing? Were you doing science projects, experiments, or did you play sports, music? Who were you then?
Well, I have always been a bit of a joiner, right? Very involved in lots of activities. Now, I do remember one Christmas, my parents got me a science set. And here are the two things I remember about that science set. One was it had a microscope, and I enjoyed sort of looking at things under the microscope. It also had a dead frog in it, and I wasn't too particular about that frog. So, but I did have that. But again, I was a cheerleader, was a majorette. I played clarinet. Again, very involved in lots of activities. I ran track in elementary school, but I, hiked and living in the mountains and flew kites and rode bicycles. So I think I, had, quite an idyllic in some ways childhood. Of course, parents shield you from some of the things that at least my parents did, from some of the harsher realities of life. I grew up in coal country, and my grandfathers worked in the coal mines. My father worked on the railroad, so he didn't have to go underground, which, as you know, was very dangerous occupation. But he did work for the railroad and was responsible. Bluefield, where I grew up, was sort of this major hub where coal was brought in by trains from the coal fields, the coal mines, and then distributed across the country. So he worked there in getting the trains to where they needed to be. So, I had a fun childhood. I don't know if you or any of your audience saw the movie Soul Food, but a part of that movie depicted the big Sunday dinners. Would go to grandmother's house on Sunday and have this huge spread. And that was what we did on Sundays. We went to my grandmother's house because, again, we all lived within about a mile or two of one another. And so that's sort of a microcosm of my childhood.
Yeah, sounds fun actually. And I could relate to my grandmother, Jewish grandmother, very close to same type of attitudes, if you will, and all the different food and everything. We were close by too. Now my aunt is 95 in Montreal. Like a second mom tells me, it was so great when we all lived in the same town. So it's
that's connections and community. And I think we really saw the value. Of course, maybe I knew that above and beyond my professional role as a psychiatrist, but certainly bringing all that together, I have always understood the value of human connection. And I think that COVID, again, was tough on us all.
yeah.
But I think there was some silver linings and a few lessons that we learned. And I think one of those was that human connection and being connected is important. Now there are many ways to be connected, and technology can be a way to be connected, but also we have to be careful with technology. As a psychiatrist, I'm attuned to the impact of social media on our youngsters. But back to the bottom line is that community connection, family connection. And again, there's no one way to be a family, but that connection is critical.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we also learned that we can have serious conversations, but we don't have to take ourselves so seriously.
Absolutely. Something I've known for a long time is that we can disagree agreeably.
Absolutely.
We can. We have the capacity to, whether we do is a different story.
Well, it's actually not that hard if you really want to. So another topic we'll get into, but let's tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, you mentioned school. You started at West Virginia University. I guess you didn't want to relocate anywhere because you got your bachelor's there, your master's there, and your MD there. What intrigued you to take that path, and then leading from there to be, board certified in psychiatry? And as you mentioned earlier, you had an experience as a private practicing physician, a public health director, and a patient advocate. So why that path?
So, Marcus Welby was my inspiration for becoming a physician. And so I'm looking at all of this now, but it appears, or what I remember is that what I liked about Dr. Welby was, yes, he was a physician and he cared about the illnesses that his patients came to him with, but he also cared about the community and the family and the broader context in which his patients lived. At least that was my understanding, and that appealed to me. And I wanted to be a physician since then, and maybe around the 8th grade. However, I did not have a clue how to get there. I knew what the end game was, I knew what my end goal was, but didn't have a clue as to how to get there. Now, as to the reason I chose West Virginia, was a little bit of I really didn't appreciate the broader world out there. And I'm sure had I applied, I may have been accepted at schools outside of the state. But to me, I had gone to WVU when I was in a junior high to a football game, beautiful football Saturday. And actually, there was a hometown hero who was a running back on the West Virginia football team. And so to me, I said, I just want to go to West Virginia. So I really didn't look outside of the state. But again, so I applied and got in. But I remember looking at the catalog, and yes, I'm that old, when you're looking at this paper sort of catalog of what to major in, and I truly had no clue. And so what I thought I would do is look at the list to see if anything related to medical technology, or medicine or medical anything. And the only thing on the paper was medical technology. And in my naivete, I said, oh, that must be what you major in if you want to become a doctor. Now, went to WVU and at orientation, realized that is looking under microscopes and understanding the disease from that perspective, but that wasn't the right major. And unfortunately, I didn't have encouraging advisors who sort of walked me through the process. And so therefore I got a bit discouraged. And so there were detours. I decided, all right, I don't know what to major in, but I do know that I like my Psychology 101 class. And keep in mind the context that I had planned to be a pediatrician, because I always like working with children. And I planned to be a pediatrician, not a psychiatrist, but I did love my Psychology 101 class. So I said, listen, I'll major in psychology, figure out the rest later. I did, figured out the prerequisites, made sure that I took those. And then there was a couple of incidents at the university where there were some issues around the lack of appreciation of diversity. And so I got involved and engaged in recruiting more students from communities of color to West Virginia University, which led to me getting my master's degree. Eventually worked for the university as special assistant to the vice president for student affairs. But at the end of the day, I said, you know what? I've always dreamed of becoming a physician. I really want to do that. It's time. And so again, after some detours, applied to medical school only at West Virginia, got in, and fell in love with psychiatry during my 3rd year clerkship. Really was fascinated by a patient of mine who was actually delusional. and he thought he was Axl Rose, and not that he wanted to be Axl Rose or play like Axl Rose or sing like Axl Rose. And so that just enhanced my already fascination with the brain. And so I decided, well, I could be a psychiatrist, but still be able to see and help children. I do child psychiatry, and that's how that happened. Came to Emory to do my fellowship in child psychiatry.
But man, I could have used that when I was a kid, although they would tell me I could use it now anyway, for the maturity level. But no, that's fantastic. That's also very Canadian, because for some reason Canadians stay in their home area instead of going like most Americans out somewhere. So welcome to the welcome to Canada as well. You know, Fifth Element was actually launched. We did it at the UN World Headquarters about 5 years ago. But we launched it on International Women's Day, and that's half of why we're called the Fifth Element, after Sustainable Development Goal number 5. So you know, everything we do is based on diversity, whether it's a search or it's a project or whatnot, and the impact that can be made. Can you describe your journey as a Black woman in healthcare? You know, the first, as you mentioned, the first African-American woman to be president of the AMA, pretty significant. And at the time you did it, also pretty significant. How did you navigate and thrive, be engaged and put yourself in a position to, you know, to achieve amazing initiatives like elevating mental health as an equal priority?
Well, I would say with lots of support, right, around me, and even knowing that I had that support when they weren't in the rooms that I was in, because as you might imagine, you know, so many other Black women of my generation, it was not unusual for me to either be the only African American in the room, or the only woman in the room, or the only African American woman in the room. And that certainly is a privilege, but it's also a responsibility. You know, women and men, Black women and of men of my age, which won't say, but people will understand that we were told by our parents and grandparents that you had to work twice as hard to be perceived as just as good. And so again, it wasn't unusual for me to be the only one in the room, but I knew I had a purpose. And actually about 3 months ago, I was asked to do this exercise, and it was sort of, tell us your 6-word memoir. And that's very challenging. You think, okay, I need to distill my entire life into 6 words. But actually I came up with one that I love. And I'm actually so glad that I did that exercise, because it really, again, distilled for me my entire life. And that is purpose, climbing mountains to give voice. And the mountain sort of plays on my West Virginia roots. But the other is my purpose of always giving voice, speaking in rooms where I was the only one, where other voices were not traditionally heard. And so I've always felt like that is my purpose. Again, my responsibility of being in those rooms where I was the only one. And again, on a variety of topics, as you mentioned, maybe an issue came up around women, health inequities around women, or communities of color, or mental health. And so I've always been able to be in those rooms and felt responsible, felt the responsibility to raise issues. And by the way, let me you know, make this clear. I've sort of evolved in my comfort with that, right? You know, 20 or 30 years ago, I was often in rooms, and I certainly would give voice, but I didn't always have a high degree of confidence. Now, after a while, I have an extreme, not an extreme degree of confidence, but I am confident, number one, of my role and the opportunity and the privilege I have. And so again, it's been fantastic, but also there's no question it's sometimes hard. Because whether spoken or unspoken, you know, oh, she doesn't belong in this room, or she's only here because of affirmative action. or she's too young or too new or too inexperienced. Again, sometimes spoken, not always directly, and sometimes unspoken, to be able to have a voice. But I always remembered that, again, not everyone has an opportunity to be in the room where it happens, to use a Hamilton reference. And so, I took that on as, again, my responsibility. And so tough, but it's truly been a privilege.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've been fortunate actually to have a lot of female bosses, and seeing different things, and some of them talk to me about them, and it's everything you said is right on. And at the same token, they also, as they evolved, they took it as a differentiation and an edge almost sometimes too, despite the fact that it was lots of obstacles. And I saw some of them grow right in front of my eyes, me being younger than them because they were ahead of me. That taught me a lot. Just watching them, how they handled it was incredible. So kudos to you, because it's not easy, but it sometimes also makes you go, damn, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it, type of deal.
Listen, if not me, who? And I think people have often spoken about, sometimes if an issue would come up around communities of color, people would turn to the person in the room who was community of color. And you have to really thread that needle, right? Because I cannot speak, the African Americans are not a monolithic, community. We're a diverse community, different. But you realize in those rooms that if you, whatever knowledge you have, if you don't speak up, there's no one else in the room to do so. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about the ascension and being in rooms and ultimately becoming the president of the AMA. And I want to say that was a strategic plan from the American Psychiatric Association. And just to quickly get an inside baseball, your audience, the AMA may seem like an opaque organization, but I say that the AMA is like the Congress of Medicine, where representatives from every state and every specialty, the young physicians, the residents, the medical students, send representatives twice a year, and those representatives then vote on policy. And so mental health, as you and your audience may know, although we are talking about it more at this moment in time, 25 years ago, we weren't talking about it. And it was even seen as not as an important part of health, and not as an important or integral part of medicine. And so we in that body at the AMA said, what we want to do is really make sure that we have psychiatrists on every committee and on every council, one day run for the board of AMA and one day run for president of the AMA. And that is what we did. And I was ultimately that person. And so that part was, a very strategic plan. Years of hard work on all of our part, my part, but a strategic plan to make sure that mental health was seen as a critical part of health and a critical part of medicine. And I was able, I hope, and to do that. And the night I was inaugurated, which was June of 2019, of course, in addition to the priorities of the American Medical Association, which was practice sustainability, physician satisfaction, working on issues of burnout, improving health outcomes, and really looking at medical education and how we educate the next generation of physicians. I said that night that I wanted to elevate three things. Number one was the importance of mental health into overall health. The second was the importance of health equity and diversity of the healthcare workforce. And third, childhood trauma. And I will tell you, again, thinking back, that was June of 2019, and all those issues came to the fore during COVID. And so I was in that room, in that seat, to help to elevate those issues.
Well, whatever religious or spiritual thing people follow, bottom line is the window opens, and then it's your chance to make an impact, basically. And this is the Leaders Who Care series, for a reason, because I learned throughout my career that the leaders that and their businesses, organizations that do way better when they're actually doing good at the same time. And when it comes to talent, they actually really do care about not just the physical and the financial well-being of their talent, but the mental well-being of their talent more than ever. Thank God it's not one flew over the cuckoo's nest anymore type of deal. You've always been super passionate, and I'm hearing it again now, but equal access to healthcare is so critical, and especially for children and communities of color. Can you describe a little bit more again why, but also the positive, what I call the domino effect on so much else, on education, on opportunity of developing future leaders, or as one client told me, got all these potential Einsteins out there that don't have that equal opportunity. It impacts health and healthcare and even crime. Can you talk about all that?
And I have said this often, that physicians have a front row seat to what's working in healthcare, but also what's not working. Mm-hmm. And not only what's working or not working in healthcare, so many factors contribute to whether a person is healthy or not. And so it is access to a physician. It is whether or not you have affordable, meaningful health coverage. But it is also whether or not you have an equitable opportunity to navigate the system and achieve your optimal health, and addressing some of the barriers that we know keep people from achieving their optimal health. For instance, if you don't have transportation, if you live in a rural area of this country, and if you are fortunate enough to have transportation, it still may take you 2 hours to get to the care that you need. Or if you live in an urban area of the country, it may take you 2 hours and 2 bus transfers to get to a grocery store where you have access to fresh and healthy produce. We talk a lot about movement and the importance of physical activity. And we say, and you don't have to belong to a gym or have a health club membership, just walk around your neighborhood. But if people live in neighborhoods that don't have well-lit sidewalks, or they may be more dangerous, they can't just get out and walk. So what may seem very easy for some people to do is very difficult for others to do. So again, through the course of my life, having a front row seat to know what's not working and to appreciate that health and being healthy occurs in a context of a lot of other, and we are social drivers of health, if you will. And so that, again, got me interested in policy from the beginning. And my aha moment, actually, regarding my digging even deeper in policy, was I was at the state capitol here in Georgia, and I was listening to some folks who were sharing their experience of what they knew about healthcare. And they were saying something about an herb or something that, I knew that this herb was not evidence-based medicine. And I said, oh, this is my aha moment to make sure that physicians, and I would say all of us, but this was my aha moment because this was Psychiatrist Day at the Capitol. And it was my aha moment that we all have to get involved and engage in policy. Because, and I know this so much more intimately now, but policy is so critical when you're thinking about equitable opportunities for health, when you're thinking about whether or not children have equitable access to mental health resources. So again, that was my aha moment around the importance of policy. And from then on, I got very involved. This is sort of even pre my involvement in AMA. I got involved here locally in policy. I was a lobbyist for a couple of years, and at the state level, and then of course my foray at a more national level. So policy is critical, and all of these things matter, and we have to get beyond blaming and shaming people for their health unless they have an equitable opportunity to achieve optimal health. And so that's what I've been passionate about as well. To address health equities, policy has to be involved. Again, we have to make sure that both you and I and everyone else has an opportunity to at least make good choices. But something I've often said is the choices we make are based on the choices we have. And if your only choice is fast food restaurants on every corner around your neighborhood, but again, like I said, and this was a story that I heard from a colleague in this country, that his patients would need to spend 2 hours and take 2 bus transfers to even get to a grocery store.
Right.
And so those are the things that we need to change. And I've always been willing. It's a lot we need to change. It can get overwhelming, but I think we each can do what we can do.
It's interesting because the opportunity we give everybody to have equal health care and stuff like that is not just an opportunity for that person. It's actually better for every single person, whether, like you said, whether it affects crime, which it will, or healthcare costs, which it will, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So even if you're selfish, it's actually better for yourself to have all this stuff, and not be discriminatory against other people, or not non-active against helping other people. So I think you're right on the money. You're talking about making a choice. We're going to talk about influencers in a minute, but we all influence people, and it's our choice. Do we do it positively or negatively? Do you want to smile, which takes less muscles than frowning, or what do you want to do? So with that, I wanted to talk about the fifth industrial revolution. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but the fourth is about technology and AI and med tech, etc. And the fifth is about humanity, which is the other half reason why we're called Fifth Element, is because it's about humanity and using technology for our better health, for our better everything, right? And we focus on impact and talent coming together in harmony, creates amazing results for everybody. So you become the CEO of eMed. I don't know if that was in the whole strategic plan earlier or not that you talked about. And you're leading the effort really to use technology to solve problems, improve the healthcare ecosystem, bring people from everywhere to get not only early diagnosis, but treatment, which is a big differentiation too, I find. So, wow, this is pretty cool, right? So tell us about it.
So, as you and I, most of the audience know, there's been a lot of attention to AI, in the last couple of years, right? But not new, right? People have been talking about this for a while, but I think maybe a little bit on the fringes. But let's say about a decade ago, we were hearing that with the advent of technology, doctors will be irrelevant, right? These are the things, we were hearing at the AMA. And I was actually on the AMA Council on Legislation. That's another very important council. All of our councils are important, but I'm probably, I'm such a policy geek that I just nerd out on policy and legislation. But when people were beginning to talk about that, again, being proactive, which I think is critical, and also my fervent belief in changing from within, by the way, which is, again, I guess gets to my old habit of joining everything, from every club in junior high school to all of my medical societies, but hearing this. And so at the time we started to think about this, and we did a couple of reports, and actually we started using the term. We decided that we were going to not be defensive. And first of all, we thought it was folly for anyone to believe. Now, listen, maybe in the year 3050, maybe we will all, be in this other, but we thought it was really folly to sort of fall down this rabbit hole of physicians are going to be irrelevant in the next, I don't know, pick a year. But let's figure out a way to have a conversation about this, right? And so we used the term, so it was artificial intelligence, and you won't need your doctor. But we said, you know what? Listen, we believe that technology has the potential to help us as physicians. And we even started using the term and wrote a report about augmented intelligence. Because there's so many things, and sometimes people say doctors are whiners, but there's so many administrative barriers and burdens, and just a lot of things that detract physicians from the time we want to spend with patients. And we knew that technology had the potential to do that, but we chose to think about ways in which technology could help us take better care of our patients. And that's why we use the term augmented intelligence. And that sort of was the foundation of how we began to think about this. And by the same token, electronic health records, which is sort of the first big tech advance that came to medicine, was sort of not even designed to help us do our work. And so we started thinking about how do we participate in the discussion and the evolution of this to augment our ability to take better care of our patients. And along with that, with my fervent ability to change from within rather than sort of looking at from the outside and complaining, and my belief that technology has the potential to solve problems, this opportunity came up to be on the ground floor with some other folks at eMed. And, we were thinking about augmented and artificial intelligence, right? We were thinking ahead. But at the time that I joined the group, I said, you know what? We have an opportunity to solve a problem right now, to use technology to solve this problem. Because, there are a lot of folks who are looking at technology with the sheer purpose of creating a shiny new object. Right. And listen, I like the latest iPhone, just like most people. So I like shiny new objects. But again, I think there needs to be deeper conversations and focus around solving problems. And so I, being the president of the AMA at the time, I saw the extreme inequities of diagnostic testing. Those very communities that were disproportionately impacted from COVID had the least access to testing. And so again, since I had a front row seat to that, when I had this opportunity later with this new company, I said, here's a problem we can solve, because we were thinking about diagnostics. We were thinking about at home, which I think is great, because the earlier you diagnose something, the better. Sure. The greater the opportunity is to intervene and give folks the care that they need. So to me, I was so excited about eMed. And with my vision, I was asked to lead this company with my vision of early diagnostics, the potential for, and we saw this coming, diagnostics at home, solving problems, and increasing access. And so with all of those things, I said, let's go. And again, became the co-founder and CEO of eMed. And we had this platform. And remember, I think now people are used to diagnostic testing at home. So you have to go back to the early days when, quite frankly, we were all frightened, right? This was a brand new virus. People were dying. Our healthcare systems were overwhelmed. And we were used to going somewhere to get a test. And we thought, okay, we want to be able to test at home, but we want to make sure there's fidelity, make sure people are performing the test correctly so that the results are correct. Yeah. And we wanted to actually give support, if you will, because I will tell you, the very first test that I took, I did it wrong, and I'm a doctor. So we thought it was important to have observed and monitored process from opening the test box, right, to making sure that it was an appropriate test. It wasn't expired. All of the test kit was there. And so we went to the FDA, and we were able to receive approval with Abbott as our partner, their test, our platform, and off we went. And boy, at the right time, people needed these tests, and we didn't want people to go to a location if they were positive to further spread COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And so, we had that wonderful opportunity to do good and do well. And so that was my the beginnings of EMED.
It's funny because I remember opening my first test too, and how many drops do I have to put? And and I'm like semi-educated, if you will. And again, we're also fearful. You don't know what's going on.
Right.
I can't even imagine, with all due respect, less exposed, less educated people. I mean, and having someone to talk to is fantastic.
Absolutely. To
Talk about,
guide you through, open the text, swab your nose. And so we tested a lot, and I can attest to the fidelity, whereas I didn't share with those folks who are monitoring, but I didn't insert the swab correctly. And they said, no, you have to insert your swab correctly. And once I dropped the swab of the test card on the floor, and they said, do you have another one? Because, there was certainly, that's an important piece of the work, and then the fidelity, because at the end of the day, an action can occur. And so you want to do all that you can to make sure that the results are accurate. And also, again, early on, and by the way, this won't be our last new virus. And so we should be thinking now, and we are at EMED thinking now about the ecosystem for earlier diagnosing and testing. Because remember, at the very beginning, we were sort of trying to track,
right,
who was positive, and not in a, and I know, not in a big brother kind of way, but really in a way to mitigate and reduce spread. Because people need to have these conversations, because if we had been able to get testing to folks sooner in the process, and then those were positive, say, okay, you please, shelter in place, and all the things that we eventually did, that had the potential to mitigate spread. Now, there's no way to sort of prove a negative, but I think we all know earlier diagnosis, earlier, we can reduce spread. And that's what we'll want to do and need to do the next time around.
Yeah, and going full circle here, about leaders who care and have been connected, and even Marcus Welby. You're now Marcus Welby in the tech world, basically. And I say that smiling and laughing, but pretty well, right? I mean,
I like that. No one's ever said that. I kind of like that. I'm kind of like that. Yeah.
And it just took time. We were waiting for you to grow up and get onto it already. So no, it's fantastic. And last couple of things, because we say in LA, we say we got to leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So that's what we do here. But a couple of really quick questions. Food has been talked about as being medicine also, as we just talked about the humanity of having someone to talk to that you actually feel like actually somebody really does care, even though I live out in who knows where, type of thing. And that it impacts so many things, where that kid could be the next Einstein, solving who knows what, because somebody did care and somebody did take care of them. What's your thoughts about food as medicine? Because you also give not just the test, but the treatment. Has there ever been any thought yet as how does food as medicine, if you will, fit into that?
Well, there's no question that what we eat is another determinant of our health, right? And so whether you call it food as medicine, or whether you are just attuned to the fact that food is very important beyond, calories and that, but it's just very important to our overall health status. That's critical. I mean, there's just no question. So we have to really look at that. We have to look at, the food supply, and we have to look at all things about what we are eating in this country. And to make sure that, well, I would not say to make sure, because that sometimes sounds all powerful. And to me, it's about transparency, and then people can make the choices that they're going to make, right? Because I know then people get start to talk about the nanny state and, you're controlling what I eat. And so I try not to come at it that way. Try to come at it from a means of, I want to give you, the patient, the public, looking from a public health standpoint, all of the information. You deserve to have access to the information and equitable access to opportunities to get the care that you need. And then absolutely, you have the choice to make that or not, but be aware of how eating this affects this. Eating a lot of sugar affects Y.
Yeah.
And so that, I think we need to have more conversations about that. And then people can make choices. And by the way, again, not the nanny state, not saying that we can't enjoy, cake and all those things. It's really is just a matter of moderation. But I'm going to assume that you and I have the choice that if we, had bacon for breakfast, or, if we had a piece of cake to celebrate someone's birthday, that we also have the choice to, have the ingredients to make a salad, right? And that we could get in our car to get to a grocery store to get healthy foods, when some people, again, the only thing they have around them are fast food. And by the way, I eat fast food occasionally, but is that all I have access to? And for me, it is not. For you, it is not. And so again, we have to, we've not talked enough about this, but hopefully as we talk about, again, all of these determinants of health, we are talking about food more.
Yeah, and we're talking about it a lot, as well as changing the whole food ecosystem and all that. There's an expression when you talked about, tell them what to do. I don't know I don't know where it came from, but it's an expression. But most people will only care about what you know once they know how much you care.
That's right.
And it's and it's for real. And if you respect people, they'll actually listen more, because they feel it. So last question. One client told me in 2021, he said, Mark, the year 2020, it was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it would have gone another great expression. Can you tell us, with respect to everything that's happened the last few years, that's almost like a blend, feels like 2020 was years ago and yesterday almost. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
I have to tell you, I was just at a conference this weekend of my sorority, and this happens to me a lot. And so I'm just grateful for this opportunity. By the way, I try to practice gratitude every day. I try to be grateful for the small things and for the little things. And sometimes it's hard, right? I get frustrated like everyone else. I remember once I was very frustrated because I couldn't find the remote. I was just furious and frustrated. And then I had self-talk. And I said, now, you know what? You just need to bring it down a little and be grateful. You'll find the remote, but there's so many other things, to get frustrated about. This remote is not one of them. And so again, gratitude is very important. I'm glad you asked me this question, because I do try to pick something out that I'm grateful for every day, even on the worst days. I try to do that. But this weekend, and something again back to the opportunity that I had during COVID, so many people have come up to me, and also a couple of things about pre-COVID and post-COVID, and again, being the first African-American woman president of AMA, but so many people have come up to me, and it happened just this week. They said, you got me through COVID. And I think you may know, and your audience may know, although my hair is different, that I was on TV a lot. I was on CNN, MSNBC, Fox. I tried to do it all, and I tried to be on. And people said that, your voice was always steady and calm. You didn't, you weren't flame throwing, and we could feel you trying to just give us the information. So it means people said, "Oh my God, you got me through COVID," and that is so meaningful, because I am just a small cog in this entire piece, but that I had influence and just made people feel calm about the whole thing, and that I was a steady voice of reason and trust. And, just so many things that you talked about the universe. In December, so at the AMA, you're inaugurated in June, and then you give your second big speech at our November policy meeting, and the focus of my speech in November was trust. And I talked about the importance of trust. And, just 3 months later, we saw the importance of trust. And unfortunately, we saw the ravages of the lack of trust in institutions. So I always want to be trustworthy, right? Because in order for someone to trust you, you must be worthy of that trust. You must have exhibited behaviors or where people can trust you. So I'm grateful for the privilege of that opportunity. The other big thing is when young people come up to me and say, we are so inspired by you, just being, who you are. And now we knew that we could go to medical school. It was a possibility. Because again, I think we all have heard, if you see it, you can be it. I take that a step further, and you talked about equity. And again, hopefully we're leaving them wanting more, because we have to go beyond just being it, but we have to make sure that people feel like they belong.
100%.
And so to me, if you can see it, I want to be the representation that you can not only be it, but that you absolutely belong in these spaces. And that's really what I want to be a representative of. And I think we have to, and again, I think that we are in a moment where there's a lot of misunderstanding about diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's some performative stuff, but there's some misinformation. And so I always want to continue to have fair. We can have a debate. Debates are great, but we want them to be fair-minded, and we want people to come with information and not talking points. And so I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to play roles in being a trusted voice during COVID, and being an inspiration for others to aspire to not just medicine, not just careers in STEM, but just whatever you dream of being. By the way, I talk to some folks and I say, if you want to be a plumber, be the best, can I curse? I say best daggone plumber.
That's pretty heavy person.
Excellence in everything. And so I'm grateful for those two opportunities. And I'm grateful that I continue to have, future opportunities, as you know, in the tech space, and to marry what you just said is caring and people achieving their optimal health.
Yeah, well said. Well, I'm super grateful to have a new friend, hopefully, and that you are a leader who cares, and it's been pretty consistent. And you said about belonging really quick. They've discovered time and time again that the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything is belonging.
That's right.
In some people. So well said. Thank you so much for sharing, and we'll be watching and riding hopefully with you to really taking care of more and more people.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.